Hello, my friend, and welcome to Sexuality, hosted by me, Johnny Seifert. This is a celebrity mental health podcast. I say it's okay to not be okay. And if you have the same answer as me, whether you're watching or listening, leave a 5-star rating, click that follow button, and leave a review. And let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. Now, let me tell you about my guest today. My guest today, I'm so delighted she joins me on Sexuality because I'm the biggest Below Deck fan, and she's come back onto Below Deck Down Under for the second time round, where it's a little bit different. We're used to a little galley with one chef, and now she's looking after a team. Yes, she's here. I'm delighted to welcome to Sakalinska. It's Tzarina. Hello, Tzarina.
Hello, how are you?
Well, I like hearing your English accent because when you're in with the Americans and the Australians, your accent changes a little bit, and it's nice that you've gone more English again.
Yeah, I think I normally adapt to where I am. I'm in America at the moment. I do find that if I'm in Australia, I go more Australian.
And
I
you
think
just
it's
pick up
easier.
around it.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Let's go back to the beginning, Tzarina. So pre-cooking, talk to me about little Tzarina, and let's start with your school life first. Who were you in school?
I hated my school years. I think some people look back and, they look at school and think, oh, that was the best time of my life. But I think for me personally, it's actually the worst time
Well,
of my
that's why you're
life.
a chef. There has to
Yeah.
be a reason why you're a chef. You like that big knife. You know that steak you cook? Bang. Yeah, that's for that person.
But yeah, I mean, I moved schools because of bullying. Um, and then my poor mother had to drive an hour away to take me to my new school. But then she actually became a teacher at my new school, which I went to a Waldorf Steiner school, which is very accepting of everyone, but it is a German Christian school. And yeah, I was the only, I think, Jewish woman out of like everyone in my year. And then also, not knowing if I liked boys or girls and trying to make a decision on that when I was younger as well. And actually, I was primarily with women when I was younger. And so being in that sort of schooling system was quite difficult. Then having very extreme dyslexia and ADHD, I was basically just a target for bullying.
God, there's so much to discuss in that, Serena. Let's break it down. Let's go one by one by one because there's four elements there. There's the religious side, there's your
Mm,
sexuality side, and then there's the mental health
mm,
side. So let's break that down if
mm.
that's okay. Let's talk about the Jewish Serena first of all. So what was the Jewish household like for you growing up? Was it Friday night dinners every week with the family, or was it just going to synagogue once a year, or nothing
No,
at all?
so my mother's Jewish and my father's actually more of a Christian background. Um,
Just to
and
add more to
so
the story.
no, really. And there's a lot more about family with religion, which I don't ever want to go public with. But I have a very incredible family when it's open to everything. So my mother would even wear like saris and do Ramadan to support the next door neighbors, So, and where I grew up wasn't, the wealthiest of areas, and so I was really lucky. And I think this is where my like strive for cooking came in because my friends around my area were Indian, Jamaican, Somalian, and I used to go and eat at their family houses. So I got to try all those new flavors. But yeah, we celebrated every religion in my family. So it wasn't exactly, we always had our Friday night dinners. My mother, though, we were a non-meat household. So I actually grew up vegetarian. So it was more like a lentil dinner for Fridays.
Yeah, yeah. That's never coming to my Friday night dinner table, a bowl of lentils. Sorry. It's
Yeah, I
roast chicken all
know.
the way. It has to
Yeah,
be.
I know. I know.
It has to
And to
be.
tell the truth, every time my mother would make roast chicken, it would probably be for the cats. So my father and I would be waiting with a knife and fork, and we'll get a bowl of lentils, and the cats would get this beautifully carved chicken from my mother. Would be like, "This is so unfair."
And you're going, I want chicken soup, and you're getting given tofu soup, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
this ain't doing it for me.
I do remember in a religion lesson that we had, there was a debate, and it was like, the Jewish people, which are me and two other guys in my school, and the other side, and we were having a debate about Christianity and Judaism. And I remember the boy in my class turned around after I said something, and his response was, "Well, of course you would say that. You killed our Messiah." And I was like, "Okay, well, this is what I'm dealing with. This is how people think around me." And I think about 13 years old or maybe 12, that was a big realization for me. But I think people don't realize that even being introduced to friends as a kid, like, oh, this is my Jewish friend. Like, it's, oh, this is Tzarina. I was always known as the Jewish friend. This is the Jewish girl in the class.
And is that because it was like, hey, this is Tzarina, she's the Jewish princess. Daddy gives her all the money and everything that she wants.
Unfortunately, not. It was more she's the crazy Jew with 12 cats at home.
So that's the religious side. And by the way, just to point out, just in case, I don't know if you can see my neck because I am Jewish as well. There's the
Ah,
Star David Sinner.
shalom.
So that's shalom to you. That's why I was asking those questions because it's actually come from a place that, I went to a Jewish school and I went to a Jewish primary school, secondary school, university effectively, and nursery. And so I've only ever been in that bubble, and I've always been at the biggest Jewish primary school and secondary school, so I don't know the other world. So that's why I find it really interesting what it's like from the other side, going somewhere where has a very different way of going.
You're just always the token Jewish friend in the group.
Whereas we bring people in and go, you're the token non-Jew, you're the token non-Jew. So
There we go.
there's
Well,
always a
you have your
token
tribe
somewhere.
next to you.
Exactly, exactly. So then you mentioned your sexuality. When was the first time you started thinking about it? And do you remember what inspired you to go, okay, actually, maybe it's girls, but maybe it might be boys?
So I really do have the most interesting family ever, and I actually think that probably 30 or 40% of my family are actually gay or lesbian. And I was raised with a lesbian grandmother. So for my family, it was really normalized. So it was never a question for me growing up. Like, it was only when I went to school and stuff and realized, okay, well, you have to kind of pick one, because with the love that my family gave and what I saw around me, that it was just normal that you could just fall in love with the person and not have to pick what sex or gender that they are, because I was just always around the gay community and always spoke very openly about it in our table. Because as a family, every single night we sat at the table and we always spoke and we always had such great conversations. So I think I realized, when I think the first people I was kissing was actually girls. And then in like my mid-teens, kind of then steered towards men because I kind of, I guess I thought that was the right thing to do. But I'm still all very like confused with it. I've been single for a long time now, and I'm just like, I think I've been explained as now I'm living in the neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale, a place called Wilton Manors. I think I'm actually a thing called pansexual. I've never really labeled myself before, but I just fall in love with the person. And so having to understand that in the 90s and early 2000s, I think is a bit confusing, but now everything has a label to it. So I guess more people are aware, but I don't even think I need a label, to be honest. Like, I just fall in love with people and not what gender they are.
Does that offend you when people label you though? If you're going, if you've grown up going, you are the Jew, and then you've got ADHD, and then you're having to define your sexuality to everyone, where it's like, I don't even need to. It doesn't even need to be a conversation. This is a conversation I only need to have with myself. Does that affect you when people are going, well, no, Tzarina, you are pansexual. Deal with it.
I'm actually obviously on the show you see a very high tension version of myself, but in real life I'm actually a very, very laid back person. I actually find it fascinating talking to other people and trans people and getting to know, their journey as well. I just find the human brain really interesting. So I don't actually mind being labeled. I'm not, it takes a lot for me to get offended.
See, I thought you were
So
going to go down the line of going, you only see 45 minutes and we film for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're the only reality star who's never gone, yeah, but you only see a little snapshot because of all the editing. But I think, we know what it's like in a high pressure system like a kitchen.
it's a pressure cooker, and these are people's lives and they're putting themselves out there. And it's so brave of these people who go into reality TV shows that go, oh my gosh, I'm going to show them every single part of me, and then, yeah, it is a pressure cooker. You're always going to be aware of the cameras around you. But I think my first year well, season, I was a bit more self-conscious, but I think the audience can definitely tell this year that I was like, no makeup, hardly showered. I just needed to get a job done.
But that's it. And I think that's the interesting thing about a show like Below Deck is that, yes, there's a camera crew, but there's also a fixed rig of cameras. So it shouldn't feel too intrusive because you're not creating a Love Island or The Only Way is Essex where it's storyline led. It's ship led and then it's storyline second and then it's you guys as characters third. There's the bits where you obviously go out for dinners that is about you guys, but primarily it's to really understand the fact of how does it work on a super yacht.
Yeah, I've noticed, especially with this season, because there's so many different levels and aspects to this season, and so many things came out. It is an incredible season, this one.
Do you feel like you're effectively trapped on that yacht for however many weeks that you haven't got anywhere to escape to? Because normally you would go, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. And if
Yeah.
you're stuck at sea, you haven't got the marina, you haven't got somewhere that just takes your mind off it with no camera crew, with no looking around these four walls, and that it's not feeling so trapped.
Yeah, I mean, and also with Below Deck, we only have 2, 3 day charters. Like, I was even talking to a friend about this yesterday when they're like, "Oh, what's the longest you've been on a boat for?" And I was like, "It was 5.5 months. The owners didn't give us a crew area outside. So the only times I went outside was to talk to the boss about food. And I was locked in a galley on my cabin for 5.5 months and hardly spoke to anyone. And it affected my mental health so bad. I missed a funeral, I missed a close family member's wedding, and they just totally take over your life, and you're not even allowed to go out and get fresh air. And I ended up getting like, I was only having air conditioning as like oxygen. And so like I started getting horrible headaches. My fatigue was terrible. I was running on 5 hours sleep a night, not eating properly on my feet all day. And it's not a very glamorous lifestyle. I think maybe in your early 20s for a few years it is great, but it's not something that I don't think anyone should do full time, especially because I do feel like the management companies and the boat owners, we should in the yachting industry have mandatory therapy every week or two. Like you have to do it, just to see like how your mental health is going. Because even on this last season of Below Deck, I had no air conditioning in that galley. There was not one window and it was all stainless steel. And I was in there for about 19 to 20 hours a day. And every morning I'll come downstairs and stand outside that galley about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and go, I'm going back to prison. And I see myself breaking throughout the season just because of the struggle of like, the constant rocking of the boat, the no air conditioning, it was so hot, like the noise of everything going round and being stuck there. And like you can't move because you have to make that food, you have to prepare it. Like it's yeah, it's a really demanding job and very difficult on the mental health. And there should be more support in the yachting industry for people.
If you heard this interview yourself and you heard what you were saying and you take it back to when you got into yachting, would that not have put you off it? You already had your mental health struggles with the ADHD at school, you've got the dyslexia, and so you're going already in with that mindset of things aren't going to get better, it's almost going to get worse. I know there's a lot
Yeah.
of pros to yachting, but there's also a lot of cons, and the mental health is one of those things that's so important that we never think about.
Yeah, I think my younger self was a very different person. I got into yachting 7 years ago after being basically sober for 3 or 4 years. Then I got back into yachting. Then that's when I started drinking again and the bad habits came in. But now I'm out of that again and looking back, I think you, you don't listen to people. You wouldn't listen to a podcast and go, some people probably turn around and go, nah, she just can't handle it. And that's a lot of people in yachting. It's like, oh well, if you think it's a mental health thing, then maybe you're just not right for yachting. It's a very like cutthroat sort of industry. And I probably wouldn't listen to my older self either. But I've been on 39 boats now, and I've very much seen it all. I've been on a sinking boat. I've had to leave 9 boats because of sexual harassment, and obviously the woman's always the problem, so the problem has to go. And like me, my first 2, 3 years of yachting almost was brainwashed in this way. So I'm just trying to get all the memories back. But I was almost brainwashed in a way of like people who were older and telling me how toxic the industry was. I wasn't listening to them.
Try and
And
prove them wrong to go, no, I'm not like
yeah,
that. I can be alpha male and I can take
yeah.
away that. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. It's like, oh, well, you're just old sort of thing. And like 26, 27-year-old Tzarina went in all cocky and arrogant. And suddenly, I think it's maybe in the last 3 years that my eyes have become more open to what the industry actually is. And it is amazing for some people. It very much is. And I have different struggles that I've had in my life where maybe that environment isn't the best for me. But everyone in yachting is running away from something. I don't know one person who's just doing it because they really want to travel, because you're not actually traveling. You are locked on a boat and a worker for a multi-billionaire who doesn't care about your well-being.
Well, look, you've opened up that can of worms now, Tzarina. So, what are you escaping from?
Me? Oh, I mean, for me, I think I was just looking for a better life and I didn't know what else I could do. From a child, like I got into chefing because it was really the only thing I could do. And so for me and my career, it was more like I think we all have family issues, we all have issues at school. And I think for me, I felt like I had nothing to go back to. I'm not comfortable in the UK. Um, if for me, when I'm in the UK, my depression kicks in, and I think it's just a trigger every time I go back. So I just keep running and running. And I think a lot of people are also doing that in yachting as well. It's like, well, what do we have to go home to?
How do you look at your sense of belonging to the world then? If you're escaping UK and therefore you don't see the UK as home, but then yachting is being at sea, but the end you're not really comfortable even being there.
Mm.
As you're navigating your 30s, where do you see yourself? Because we all have a purpose in life. We all have a reason why we're
Mm.
here. What's your purpose? Because it can't just be you look, you make the most amazing food, right? Your food is incredible, but you could do that here, there, and anywhere. And someone has given you this pathway to go, no, you've got to be doing it on that yacht. So what is the destination that you're trying to get to?
This has been 2 years of me racking my brain, and I really thought that coming to America would help me actually maybe find if they maybe I want to set up base here, but because of all the laws changing, that's probably not going to be an option anymore. And then I'm going to be going back to my surf retreat in the north of Spain because I got to train some more crew there, and I'm going to take about 2 or 3 months there to see what my next step is. Even been thinking, should I go back to Australia? But the difficult thing is that I thought I was going to base myself in Palma de Mallorca. Then Brexit happened, so I couldn't be in Europe anymore. And then I have a brilliant visa for America, so I thought, okay, I'll come to America. Now everything's happening here, and I'm at this stage where like I can't be in the UK. Like I For me, that's not 100% my home anymore. I love to go visit, but I can't personally live there, mainly because of the healthcare system. Because I do live with a disease, which I'm not going to go too public about at the moment. But my healthcare, like the waiting lists are too long for the sort of healthcare that I need, and so I kind of have to travel around to see where the best place is for me to get medical help as well. Um, so I've actually been really lost, but in this whole stage of being lost, like beautiful things have come out of it as well because I've had a lot of self-growth. I've become really resilient. I've worked on myself a lot, and through that, for the last 2 years, I've been working on my own project for a something that I would like to do personally for a future TV show, and I've actually got more connections and stuff happening and more movements on that for the future as well. So hopefully, once that gets flowing, I'll have more of an answer of where I can actually be based.
Well, that's
Because
well, that's the interesting thing. When you go into TV and you dip your toe in, you go, oh, this is exciting, you know.
Mm.
I mean, you haven't gone to the level of, I suppose, the equivalent of like the traitors, like Kate did from Below
Yeah.
Deck, of, the hair, the makeup, the glam side of TV. You've kind of gone, here's a camera shoved in your face, Osborne style. But, you've dipped your toe in, you've got your followers on Instagram now, you're doing that content creation. Is
Mm.
TV the way forward, or is it even with the Below Deck franchise, with people like Alicia and Marley who've worked on many series across different formats?
Mm.
Do you see yourself as being part of that below deck family permanently, or is it a case of, look, I've done down under, and that's great because it's part of my yachting, and that gave me my couple of weeks when I'm working on all the 39 other boats, but also there's a Tzarina that's not here to be famous. There's a Tzarina who is just wanting to be a mentor and just stop the next generation going through the mental health challenges that I went through.
Yeah, I mean, I even before Below Deck, I knew that I what I wanted my goals to be in the TV world because I did go from restaurants, well, cooking school, restaurants, working my ass up. I literally washed up for 2 years in my teens to like just be able to make a sauce if I was lucky. I've really worked through the restaurant industry to go into private chefing, then high-end shallows for Russians, to then into yachting. And I knew that TV would be my next stage. And I always had an idea for like my own show and own concept, what I wanted to do. And then the opportunity of Below Deck came up, and this whole new extra world opened up to me. And it's something I'd be so grateful for. I mean, it's so hard with Below Deck, with the franchises, to become a Kate or an Asia. You know, you have to be, so lucky to be asked back and to be picked again. And I think that most people kind of pray and hope that they will be that person, but that isn't up to us, you
But
know?
do you not feel like now you've done two series, there has to be the third? Like, surely you can control the narrative a little bit more now because you've been so successful, especially on this series, that there is that need to have you back year after year. And it's down to you rather than the production side going, we've got more chefs in the line.
No, I think that's never going to be up to my side. I think Below Deck always know that we are all available, and it is almost the beautiful thing about Below Deck, and is that we we feel like we're part of something because we've done something incredible. We got given this opportunity that thousands of people dream of, and we managed to get it. And I think Below Deck knows that even the people who in the moment say, I absolutely hate this, um, still then want to come back, because then they watch it and they see and they get all their excitement, that dopamine comes up, all that serotonin, the oxytocin. Oh my God, I'm loved. Look at this. And then the lows of all the haters, and then you go up with the love. And like it gets so addicted doing something this incredible that I do think that most people would want to go back. But it is so challenging and so hard on the body. I mean, Down Under has been incredible and it's been a beautiful experience, but then you never know what's going to happen in the future, because everyone's just waiting for that phone call to say that we want you.
But then does it work the other way as well? That if you've worked on 39 ships and then you're pitching yourself to the next lot of captains, and I know you're saying you only work with the trusted ones, but if there's one moment on the show that could ruin everything for you, just one outburst, or you've not served the best food, and they're going, "Well, I'm judging you on that." That's effectively below decks like your live resume. That actually it could go work against you rather than for you.
I think personally, I wouldn't want to work for someone that would look at a TV show and think that. And if that's the case, that's not a captain I want to work for. So
Yeah, I get
it's
that. I get that.
it's I mean, I know that a lot of people in Below Deck have struggled to get work on boats again. Um, but that's not them and that's not Below Deck. That's the judgmental person picking people.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because in my eyes, if you can get through a season of Below Deck, you are the most hardworking, you're full of energy, you push through the most intense thing you're going to ever put your body and your brain through, and you made it out the other side. And for me personally, if I was a yacht owner or a captain, if I saw that someone had Below Deck on their CV, I would take them knowing that person can deal with pressure so well.
I think you're completely right, and I think it's really interesting the way, and I do generally see the positive, and I love Below Deck, not just for the drama, but I love it as an educational tool of this is what it's like. Final question for you, Tzarina. Did you think Below Deck would ever be this successful? Because it was kind of a show that was on obviously in 2011, I think it was 2012, and then it was really lockdown that just brought it alive. I think Netflix or Amazon Prime took two or three series, and suddenly it just blew up, and now you've got the four franchises. Did you ever think that Below Deck would be this big?
I mean, I always watched it before, and I personally always loved it, and I thought it was quite big anyway. But what they do to create this show, and all the behind the scenes people and the editing and the music and everything they put on, it's addictive. And even the most unlikely people, when you actually sit down and watch one episode, they're going to be finishing the rest of that season. It's a beautifully done show. And it's not a shock for me at all that it's exploded. Even I went to Tortuga Festival yesterday in Fort Lauderdale, and I think Adara and I probably in total must have had like almost 50 to 100 people come up to us and say hello. And that's just at one festival. And it's like, that's when you realize this is getting big. And it's a lot bigger than us, because at the end of the day, we're just people trying to make it in this world, and you know, and it's like, oh, little me, like you know me, you want to talk to me. It's a very, very bizarre feeling, but also really, really beautiful.
Okay, well, Tzarina, I can't thank you enough for coming on Skinny. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank
If you
you.
love Below Deck Down Under, whatever season you like, go and check out Skinny. Captain Sandy and Courtney Vale from Below Deck Med have been on before. And if you love today's episode of Skinny, then give it a little follow, give the 5-star rating and a review, and let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. On social media, at Johnny Seifert 92 on TikTok, at Johnny Seifert at Skinny Podcast on Instagram. So you can find me. Where can people find you, Tzarina?
Oh, and just Chef Tzarina on Instagram.
Well, and that's where you're going to see the all amazing pictures of food. Tzarina hasn't said in the past episode that she's going to invite me for dinner and to cook for me, but whatever. It's fine. It's fine. We'll live with it. I thought she was going to take me on a super yacht and feed me, but no. You've been watching or listening to Skinny. Until next time, I'm Johnny Seifert. Thanks and goodbye.